Buckeye Talk with the very best here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you joining us. Before you get settled, hit the like button. Do that and leave those comments and questions in the live chat as we always talk it up with Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop. And guess what? Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. So we should have the scoop here, is what I'm assuming here on Ohio State football. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great. Well,
all right. I'm guessing Ryan Day's doing pretty well himself. I would think so. I'm looking to make $9.5 million someday, but I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. Maybe when we put the lifetime earnings together, we'll be in that range. I don't know. I haven't done the math. But Tony, we will start with you. Ryan Day, just coming down here in the last hour, as you alerted me before we went live, has signed an extension with Ohio State through 2028.
Yeah, a 2-year extension through 2028 sees his salary go from $7.6 million to $9.5 million. So that helps with recruiting, and you're trying to stay like 4 or 5 years ahead so that everybody you're recruiting will be able to be told that they'll be there, that your head coach will be there the entire time. And Mark, if you want to make $9-10 million in football, it's pretty easy, but you have to be able to get through like the 3 or 4 years of making like $4,000 a year as a GA or as an intern or a volunteer. If you can do that, then you can eventually, get into earning a salary as a coach that you can not live on, but ish live on. And
give me one of those express passes.
No.
Okay. Can't do that.
No. Is your name Marcus Freeman? It is not.
So I could change it to Marcus Rogers possibly, but
try it. Let's see. I mean, it couldn't hurt at this point, right? I mean, where are you in your coaching status? Nowhere, right?
I do a lot of armchair coaching / quarterbacking here. I don't know if that'll fly.
For me, that's good enough. For Kevin, that's good enough. I'm sure as well.
I just need to sign a 1-year deal at 9.5. I'm not greedy. I don't need all of these years. I wouldn't know what to do with myself, but it's a tough way to make a living. I know we're not basketball centric on this show, but there have been plenty of people. Chris Holtman signed a deal as well as 5 coaches were listed in there, including Kevin McGuff, Nick Myers, and Steve Rolick. People like, well, what did he do to deserve it or whatever? But it's an arms race there. And, the people who sit there, I'm like, it's not real money. I mean, it's real money to the coaches, but, you're dealing, you see a coach sign a deal and then he's gone within 8 months for another job or whatever. It's a lot of theoretical dollars at this point, but, good for Ryan Day. It's certainly a long time coming. You knew it was coming at this point, and it keeps them up there among the highest paid coaches in the nation, right there with the Sabins and the Jimbo Fishers of the world.
Yeah, and if you want to give me a $9.5 million, I'll even take a $2 million buyout. Like, you can throw a smaller buyout in there. I would still be happy with that.
Yeah, you could do a number of things with that contract, and I don't think it would keep me from signing it in any such way. So there's a lot of leeway once you throw down these near 8 figures. But Ryan Day, and again, that is the comment that comes slinging back, the one that Kevin just made by most people. What did that guy do to deserve it? Well, in Ryan Day's case, he's 34-4. So he's done a lot. But with others, it's just simply you got to recruit guys. You got to show some stability. You've got to show some commitment to the coach. So either make a move to get rid of him or make sure that the incoming freshmen know that he's going to be around for 3 or 4 years. So you've got a choice to make. You can't keep your coaches dangling at a year's distance in the future, because it's just not going to fly with a recruiting process being as difficult as it is, and is now becoming even more so. All right, we talk Buckeyes with all of you. Lock it in with the comments and the questions. Hit the like button as well. Let's move on to the other major topic here, which is, of course, the announcement of the Notre Dame kickoff time, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. College Game Day will be there. Kevin, there was thought much of the offseason that this was going to be a big noon Fox game, but they've made their selections and ABC's grabbed it.
Yeah, exactly. And, it just comes down to, it shows that Ohio State sells product, and the number 1 overall pick is Ohio State, Michigan, and this ends up being the number 2 overall pick. You could make arguments about games like Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. There's certainly some good contests over in the West, but this is Ohio State and Notre Dame, and they don't play each other all that often. And ABC was sure to snap it up. It's obviously a big deal for a lot of reasons. It's going to be a huge recruiting weekend for them, even though their big official visit weekend now with summer officials is going to be June 24th. You're going to still have a ton of guys who are going to come in for unofficials for that game. It gives people an opportunity to come from points all over the country because Ohio State's recruiting is national. I also did read in a release, too, that Ohio State and Wisconsin, I believe, is an ABC game as well. Time to be determined, but that wouldn't surprise me to make that another showcase type of situation. I think it's going to be good. For writers, it's not great. At least we don't work in that antiquated medium that is known as print. So we don't have a deadline, or worse yet, the deadline, there's zero chance of making the paper. But I think there will be a lot of people that will need to remember to hydrate, to pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And they don't play that often. So you certainly want to be able to remember it. So exercise moderation. Thanks.
Moderation. Kevin, you just said it. They don't play that often. This is the time to not exercise moderation. And you to be spouting off moderation. Sir.
It's a new Kevin. I mean, rules for thee are not for me.
Do as
As of when? 10 a.m. this morning or something?
I do covering games. I like noon games. Covering big games, I like night games at home, not on the road. It gets a little late, but I think this is perfect for a night game. There's going to be so much buildup all day long, waiting for it, all weekend long, waiting for it. It's the first weekend. Games start on Thursday. You get games on Friday. You get games on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's kind of the crescendo of the entire weekend, and then it's back a little bit after that. But I got done recording an episode of Buckeye Weekly for tomorrow where Tom Moore and I tried to predict every game in terms of what network and what kickoff time based on what little information we have. And so just breaking things down in terms of like that Penn State game is probably the 3rd pick overall among the Big Ten schedule, which makes that a Fox noon kickoff. So that'll be interesting. And the Wisconsin game, I'm assuming, will be at night because there aren't a lot of other great games. Like that's going to be that's the best game of the weekend, and Wisconsin's going to be 3-0. Ohio State will be at least 2-1. So that'll be a big matchup that could be at night. And so, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an all-day affair, and frankly, some pre-gaming may start on Friday as well.
What I got out of that is we're going to clip off a segment and put Gerdeman predicts Notre Dame to beat Ohio State.
I could have been talking about Toledo or Arkansas State. You don't know that, Mark.
This is true.
You disappoint me.
This is true. All right. Gerdeman predicts greatest upset in this century in college football. Buckeyes lose as a 49-point favorite against Arkansas State. Okay. Either one, I think we're going to go viral with that.
Just all right. If I get it right, though, we'll be thrilled.
Absolutely. Okay. Appreciate everybody being here, talking Buckeyes. Yes, Notre Dame, Ohio State set for 7:30 kickoff on that opening weekend, September 3rd. ABC and also College Game Day shows up. Guys, I have to admit it. shoot, I've admitted it for years and stated it here. College Game Day is the standard. It's an amazing show, all those things. I don't understand why people care where College Game Day is going, unless you're on campus and you want College Game Day to come so you can show up and take part in this. But people thousands and thousands of miles away, they really care where College Game Day is going to show up.
I mean, I get it. I mean, it's a good advertisement for your school. They generally do a couple of extra features on the home school, maybe an extra feature on the road school for that. So, you certainly get to see some scenics. I'm not going to say this as somebody who used to work for Fox and never worked for ESPN. I think Big Noon Kickoff has better substance to it, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. But yeah, people lose their mind. I mean, they lose their mind over all this stuff. I mean, kind of running parallel with this, with some of the game times being out, there's a petition going around University of Texas right now to petition moving that 11 a.m. kickoff to a night game, because that's exactly how this works. Your petition that has 500 signatures, 500, that's probably going to get it done. You know what? If I could do that, I'm going to start a petition to get the end game uncanceled on NBC, because they finished it on a cliffhanger, and now I'll never know what's going to happen.
Oh, poor Kevin. What you need to do is you need to be from like a parents organization. You write one letter to a network, and then they change everything and make things happy and calmer for you, and then you get what you want. You got to complain a little bit. And I don't know that 500 people signing a petition is going to do much for that game. I am also looking forward to that one for sure. I know it's going to be warm, but it's going to be warmer in the afternoon in that game than it will be early around kickoff. It gets hotter as it goes in Texas. And the thing that I kind of find puzzling is that people, if it was a night game, they would be out at noon drinking and getting ready for the game anyway. So they'll be outside regardless. I think people are missing the boat a little bit on post-game tailgating instead of just it can only be done before the game. And yeah, it's really early when you have to tailgate for a noon game. But then you're back at the tailgate by 4 in the afternoon. You've got the entire afternoon, evening, and early morning to continue to do whatever you want right at that tailgate spot. And so I don't think you have to get everything done by 11 in the morning. All right, you don't. I promise you, there's more time to get things done after that. And what was the original question about? Because I did want to address that before Kevin sent us on a tangent.
That's what I do.
The original setup was just basically why the fascination with College Game Day and where it's located. I don't get it myself. I don't understand.
To me, it's one of those things where everything about college football, fan bases want to win, to me. And our school has more College Game Day. Like it's a status thing. We've got College Game Day this week. That means we're great. It's wanting to win recruiting classes. It's fans looking at spring game attendance. We won spring game attendance championship this year. Your school sucks. Ours doesn't. Look at our ratings. Look. You see, we had the 3 highest rated games last season. Your school sucks. Ours doesn't. Everything is a competition, and this is one more of those things. Ohio State put out a graphic yesterday, like 54 appearances on game day or whatever it is. It's a recruiting tool. It's a competition. It's wanting to beat your rival. It's wanting to beat everybody else. It's wanting to show that you are the you've dominated in something. You've earned something that week. It's just all about a competition, in my opinion. It's a status symbol, and that's the explanation for that, in my opinion.
Well, I know you're at least partially true, if not completely true. But did Ohio State post that number versus the competition? Or did it just state 54 appearances?
Well, the confusing thing for me, I think their thing was 54, but ESPN's thing was like 26. Like 26 times they've gone to Columbus. So I don't know. I haven't fact checked all of it, but yeah, it's definitely it's in Ohio State's game notes when it's game day. They have like a list of Ohio State has been on game day this many times. Here's the results of every single week. Like and I'm sure they're not alone. And the first time game day goes somewhere, it's game day is here. It's a big thing, and it becomes. But it is also the standard bearer of college football television, and I agree with Kevin. Big Noon Kickoff when Urban Meyer was there was a really informative, entertaining show that gave you more substance and was a definite competitor. Him leaving for Jacksonville, I think, hurt Big Noon Kickoff last year, and now they're going to have to restart that and try to build that back up again. But it's still one of these things. It's just it perpetuates itself. Game day, it's a monster, and you can try to compete with it. And Fox is going so far to compete with it. They've created the Big Noon Saturday, their 12 p.m. kickoffs, to kind of help that pregame show, and also then put their premier game at a time when the competition is lesser. So it's a behemoth, and Fox is trying to compete with it, and they're throwing everything they have at it, and it's still like game day is like, but I also think game day is a little worried that they have Lee Corso for how much longer, and how much longer do they have Kirk Herbstreit? I know he's going to be doing some NFL games. At some point, this all becomes too much, and I think he's going to have to choose between doing games and doing game day. And the last thing ESPN wants, I think, is really any change to game day. But the thing has been on for 30 years now, and they've had two major changes, basically going from Chris Fowler to Reese Davis and going from Craig James to Kirk Herbstreit. And Lee Corso has been the guy the entire time. He's been there, and they add in David Pollack here, Desmond Howard here, and make it a four-man thing. And, I don't know. Kevin, if you would like to share some thoughts on Desmond Howard's, role on that show, Mark, if you would, anybody, I don't really have any opinions one way or the other.
The show has turned into a lot of laughing and backslapping and inside jokes and nonsensical takes. And you know what? It's kind of a tradition to watch it. And I understand, that it's just something that you're used to doing. If Ohio State plays a 3:30 game, I catch a little bit of it before I jump in the car. If they're playing a night game, I certainly watch the whole thing. During Ohio State's open week, I watch the whole thing where I'm flipping between the two shows. But you're right, there have not been a lot of changes. I mean, the cast of characters has gotten larger, but you can only tell so many stories. I mean, obviously the personnel changes, you're this kid or that kid, but you do kind of run into a situation where it is kind of a regurgitation of itself. So I think the show has lost some luster. I'd like to think that, some internet sites like, the one that Tony and I work for, take the veil off of some of the stuff. So you already know a lot of these stories weeks and months and years in advance of the time that they're going to be on there. But you know what, not to get into my old television producer role, but you don't do this show for the hardest of hardcore fans. You do it for, there's the 20% that are going to watch regardless. There's the 20% that are never going to watch. And then there's the 60%. And you're really working on trying to get that 60% interested in it and everything else. And, back to the original point, I agree with what Tony says. Everybody's competitive. They want to sit there and have the most game day appearances and have the best concession food and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a matter of pride. And, the truth of the matter is that college football has just become such a great product in terms of the lifestyle of it. We're able to, what is this? Ohio State Live 394. I mean, we've been doing these for a long time here on there. And, thank God that people want to talk about these things. And we've managed to get 15 minutes about game day, college game day.
Which again, doesn't matter. But because I've got to respond to what the viewers want, I may post a video and say, but I'm a little bit late on that, so I couldn't predict the first week. It was going to be Ohio State Notre Dame. It's easy for me to say that now, But yeah, that's a little late for me to produce a video that I think a lot of people would have watched, even though I could care less and I don't understand the fascination in College Game Day. Exceptional show. Kind of agree with Kevin in regards to the way it's gone here in recent years. I would be surprised, or I would be interested to know how many people remember that Craig James was on College Game Day, or care, or that old to remember it. So it's the Kirk Herbstreit topic that you bring up, and in regards to him possibly having to make a decision at some point in the next few years, that could really shake things up a little bit, because I think that he's most associated with the show than anybody else, even more so than if Fowler would have stayed, because former players and analysts seem to have more of an attachment with fans than the host itself. But in most cases,
I think Herbstreit was very smart in learning from what happened to Craig James when Craig James left Game Day to do NFL games on CBS. And Craig James lasted about a year. He took more money, went to the NFL, saw it as a step up, and Kirk Herbstreit has been cashing checks ever since. And the checks just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know how many people have a better job than his in sports. And granted, it's a lot of travel on Saturday when you have to go from what you may be doing game day in Athens and you're calling a USC game in LA that night. But I think he's happy doing it. But at some point, you have all the money you'll ever need, and you would like your time starts to become more valuable, and it becomes more valuable than the money you could make doing a slate of games or Saturdays at game day. But I agree, like ESPN would lose so much by losing him on game day. It would be better to lose him as an analyst almost than to lose him on game day, depending on. I think I agree with my own statement. It would be more devastating to lose him for game day, because that, as you said, like, how many years has he been there now? Has it been 20, 22, 23?
A long time. And I like Herbie. I'm going to throw that out as a preface before I say this next comment. I remember when he was doing his call-in show from Coaches on Bethel Road, begging people to call into the show. It was 4 people and a small dog listening. And the meteoric rise, and it's been a lot of hard work, and he's been surrounded by a lot of good people. And now he signs that Amazon deal, and he's going to be even busier with all of that. And, kudos to Herbie. But, we all start somewhere. And I remember him starting on local radio and having a hard time getting, filling that air.
Yeah, no, Kevin's exactly right. Doing local sports radio here in Columbus, doing sidelines for Arena Football League for a time, if I recall, as well. So, like, he has definitely put in his time, and he's been doing this probably since his last season in 1992 or 93 as a Buckeye too. Yeah, 92, because then it was Brett Powers and Bobby Hoying in 93.
Yep.
So, because I got to Columbus in 94, and it wasn't too long after that he was on the radio. So.
Yeah, that makes me feel better about our call-in shows here. We typically have to shut it down after like 3.5 hours. We got too many calls, and I've got a larger collection of small dogs listening, I think, than just the few that he had. So I think we're doing a little bit better. The 4 people, though, I think we're in that range, though. So we're going to have to push forward. See, Mike 3883. Mike is a faithful viewer. I don't know how old Mike is, but see, I can't relate to this. I could care less what Lee Corso puts on his head at the end of the but I did when I was 20. I watched when I was 20, and I guess I don't know that I cared, but I watched it.
Like Chris Berman stuff too, and all of that, and then you grow up. And I just can't. I mean, I have a visceral reaction when I hear that stuff now. I mean, and he's not been on much, but when he does that occasional Applebee's commercial, I stopped going to Applebee's. Plus, I don't really care for Applebee's, but
I thought it was going to be the opposite reaction. Okay,
there are a lot of things I liked in my youth that I don't like now. Headgear picks, drinking Southern Comfort, doing homework. Well, and I guess I never liked doing homework, but you do go through some things, and I think it's just a matter of after the 38th time that he does the old switcheroo. Oh, I'm grabbing this headgear and I'm going to put this one on. I'm just here for when he drops F-bombs on the air.
Well, that's a very good point, Kevin. That is one of the greatest moments in ESPN television history, probably cable sports television history. Sitting there with, I think Carl Lewis was the celebrity picker that week, and that was a good time. And I think I saw that live, but you've seen it so many times it becomes part of. Oh shoot, I was at that game. But I still find myself like in the press box being, hey, who did Corso pick? Just asking. And it's still something I have an interest in knowing. I don't have to ever ask who did Desmond pick. I pretty well know that one before the picks come in. But there is still some. Maybe it's just you grow up with it and it has a special place in your heart, and that sort of thing. It's the Star Wars of college football, basically.
I guess I became a little too closely affiliated. Not that I can take any credit for any success that College Game Day had. I had nothing to do with it. I did have somebody report to me that was in charge of audio for College Game Day about the last 3 years I worked at ESPN, but he ran off and did his own thing and just checked in with me. So I had no impact on the success of College Game Day. And I loved it before I started working at ESPN, and I just kind of drifted away from it and just checked in for BAM. It's really, by and large, most of the pregame shows have left me in the last couple decades. I've become I show up for a kickoff. I want to watch the game.
But you're also doing your own pregame stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing my own thing. And so, which isn't a great promotion for getting people to watch what I do, to say, yeah, these things are worthless. All right. The Buckeyes line up against Arkansas State in week 2, and we are going to continue our opponents series. We did have Jeff on the line. Is he still with us? We'll wait for him to check in. He was just there. I think he left at the wrong time, or I checked in at the wrong time. So we will wait for Jeff to come on back. So Jeff Reed's going to join us in a few minutes from 247 Sports there with A-State Nation to talk some Arkansas football. So we'll wait for Jeff to get back. Yakov's here. Do any of you still have an SI football phone?
I never had one. I never had a Sports Illustrated subscription. I was more of a sporting news man.
Ooh,
I liked having the baseball
news.
Box scores and stuff like that. The newspaper feel as opposed to the SI glossiness. I preferred sporting news.
Yeah, we had an SI subscription for many years when I was a kid, but we never signed up at the right time to get the football. And then when I did finally get my first magazine subscription, it was one that I can't talk about.
Yes. I was such a nerd.
Like? It had bunny ears on it. And
there you go. Well, I thought you were going another direction, but I know, yeah, the one time a year I would get flagged by my mom, especially since I started with Sports Illustrated at like the age of 10, that swimsuit, but it would typically get by her and I was okay. But I would get called out for that once a year. Like, what are they doing? What is this? Never got the phone. I was such a nerd that I didn't care about the giveaways. I was all into the content even then. But you're right, Tony. I was huge into Sports Illustrated, started getting it. Yeah. When I was 10, but as soon as I found the sporting news, oh my goodness. Yeah. No comparison. I could, it's much like College Game Day. I don't need to shed a tear before noon on Saturday. Just give me the nuts and bolts. I want to know, the depth charts and the baseball coverage. Absolutely.
You guys,
all right, I think
your mass market magazines. I had Baseball Digest because I was focused on one sport.
There you
that
go.
too.
There's another one.
I'm in the process of cleaning out my garage, and I've cleaned out a lot of Baseball Digest from 1991. All right. Yes, Baseball and Football Digest. All right. Enough of that. Jeff Reed's hanging out, waiting to talk some football with us. Jeff, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining us. Jeff joins us from A-State Nation on 247 Sports. Jeff, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. And I also remember those swimsuit issues, but I never did get a phone either. So
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes,
doing
yes,
well. Thank you.
absolutely. I had forgotten about the phone, actually. So we are running a series, Jeff, as you know, where we're running through Ohio State's opponents. So week 2, the Red Wolves come to Columbus. And we know a few pretty prominent players from the Power 5 level are in play here when we talk about Butch Jones, of course, formerly of Tennessee, the current head coach at Arkansas State, and James Blackman, I believe, is going to be your quarterback this season. So give us a take on Arkansas State coming off a rough 2-10 year.
Yeah, it was it was a rough season. I think a lot of it was the fact that the roster had gotten talent wise to a very, very low position. What it's been in the previous years, they'd just come up a run where they'd had like 9 straight bowl games and like 5 or 6 conference championships, and it started to fall off in 20. They went 21. They went 4-7, and then last year was 2-10, and it was. And I talked to Butch, and he basically said that he knew the situation was getting lean with talent, but he got here and found out it was worse than what he thought it was. And then you still had, most of the roster were Blake Anderson guys, and he brought in some new guys, and so things didn't quite mesh there. And they did win 2 games, and basically it started off horrible. I mean, they were just getting mashed every week, and they played a lot better down the stretch, had a chance to win 3 games that they didn't, but they could have easily have won those if they'd gotten better quarterback play. And then, of course, if they're 5-7, everybody's not thinking quite so bad, but 2-10 looks bad. I know Butch was embarrassed, and they have brought in a lot of talent, and they're expecting a pretty good turnaround this year.
I was looking, and I don't know if anything had moved forward on it, but former Ohio State running back Brian Snead had taken some visits to Arkansas State, or a visit to Arkansas State. I looked, and there Arkansas State was 128th in the nation last year running the ball, 82.4 yards per game. Is there any news on whether or not that's somebody that they're going to be able to pursue and bring in, and how are they going to obviously improve an aspect of the game that was just dismal last year?
Well, obviously, as we all know, if you want to run the ball, you got to have the horses up front that's gonna block and make the holes for it. That would make any of them better running backs. Brian is a guy that's on the radar, and I think is in the process of trying to get clearance to get into school. And if he does, he will be a welcome addition to the running back room. It's they've got a transfer from Iowa State in there who's not bad, and the running back room, they got a couple of really good. They got a kid that transferred in from Purdue. His name is Jaquez Cross. He's an Arkansas guy. And they got a good freshman out of Alabama that they're real high on. But Snead would be a definite addition to it, and somebody that makes that room better. But they're really working on the offensive line. It's already better than it was last year, but they're trying to get a couple more guys that they can add before the season starts in August. They really worked the portal hard, but if you followed the portal very much at all, offensive linemen have been at a premium, and not so much that the P5s are looking for starters. It's just they're looking for depth, quality depth to improve their chances. So we'll see what happens there. I think Snead will wind up on campus. I really do. But it's not set yet, and they're bringing in offensive linemen, and then they'll be working up to August 1 on that. As Butch says, the roster is always evolving.
And you look at the quick turnaround he had at Cincinnati. I think Arkansas State had 5 losses by a score or less by 1 score last year. That can be spun in a positive direction, that you were so close, and Butch Jones can tell his players, like, look how close you were. And is that part of the message? Like, you guys, you are not 2-10, you're better than that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the roster has evolved. There's probably like about 20 guys, 20, 25 guys who are here when Butch first arrived. So there's been a major makeover there. They've gotten a lot of, they feel, more talented type guys. One thing that helps is the schedule changes. Uh, the first 5 weeks of the season, they opened with Central Arkansas at home and they won that game. But then they had Memphis at home. They lost that. They went to a good Tulsa and lost that. Then they had to make a trip to Washington. And even though the Huskies weren't bad, it's a long trip, and they had to come back. They got back from that, and then they had to open conference play on a Thursday in South Georgia. I mean, Butch was. He said, "Who made this schedule?" You know, because there was obviously the non-conference were there for a long time, but the conference games were already. They weren't that, but it still was not a good break having to go from Washington across 2 time zones and all that hours of flight, and then come home, get home late Monday, and then you got to turn around and go to Georgia on a Wednesday. I mean, it was not a lot of prep time on that. And like I said, after that, the schedule, then they had Coastal Carolina that came in and App State, and they're both were really good for this level. And after that, the schedule kind of softened and they started playing better and they had a chance to win some games. But the schedule is a lot more favorable this time, and with new players, and they're more accustomed to what. And it was still a learning process. Even though he was here in spring practice, there were still guys who were added in the summer and things like that. Like James Blackman, the starting quarterback, who was a transfer from Florida State, he didn't get here till July. So. And he didn't have a lot of time to get ready. Everybody knows what's expected, and they know the game plan, and they know the plays. And I think all that lends itself that there could be a lot better season. I think there could be anywhere from 5 to 8 wins this year.
Jeff, considering – go ahead, guys.
I was going to say, I'm looking at the last 3 games of the schedule. They beat Louisiana Monroe by 3, and then they lose to Georgia State by 8 and Texas State by 2. Is that a matter of just who the opponents were, or was the light bulb starting to go on? And even, and it's a far cry from, losing by 32 to Coastal and losing by 18 to South Alabama. I mean, is that something that they're going to be able to build upon, or was that just a matter of Monroe, Georgia State, and Texas State? I mean, because I don't follow the Sun Belt that closely, just being not very good.
Yeah, I think that obviously the talent dropped off from some of the earlier games. Now, the South Alabama game, which they lost by 18, they were in that game and they threw 3 interceptions, and they just were turnover plagued that day. Texas State was not a very good team. It's a game that they should have won. They actually were kicking for a field goal, although it was pretty much almost 50 yards into a strong win. It was the only chance they had on the last play to win it. The talent, though, in Georgia State was a good team, went to a bowl game. Now, we're not talking Ohio State, Alabama good. I mean, but for this level, they went to a bowl game. They're not bad. And they were in those games. Like I said, they started to turn things around toward the late end of the season. And in this day of time, defensively, if you hold somebody under 30 or 28, then you should have a chance to win because the game is so offensive oriented now.
Hey, Jeff, we appreciate you being here. I just have one last question, unless Tony and Kevin have anything else. Considering the success that you alluded to off the top, Blake Anderson, I think, shared or had outright 5 consecutive Sun Belt championships there. We're just talking in the last decade. And of course, he moved on, and a lot of people know his story, unfortunately, concerning his wife and so forth. But, what's the feel, the vibe? What are the expectations in the region, in the area there in Jonesboro concerning Arkansas State football, and how much time they'll give Butch Jones and versus demanding more immediate success?
Yeah, I think people expect to see improvement this year, no doubt about it. I think there was a lot of disgruntled people last year because of the way things were going. And I actually tweeted out one time, "Hey, people, this team was 2-6 in the Sun Belt last year. It's not like it's been that much of a fall off. They kind of forget they had the big win at Kansas State during the early part of the COVID, where I don't know if Kansas State how many players they were missing, but they were missing quite a bit. But there's a receiver here named Jonathan Adams who was really good, and if you follow the USFL right now, he's playing and making great plays for New Orleans team. He's just an acrobatic type guy that really is good along the goal line because he's 6'3", he can jump, and he can grab those balls there. But I think expectations, I don't know if many people are expecting a winning season. Like I said, I think they could go anywhere from 5 wins to 8 wins, but I think expectations, they want to see improvement for sure.
Jeff Reed, A-State Nation, there on 247 Sports. Check out his work right there. Jeff, we appreciate you stopping by, getting us caught up on Arkansas State football.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
That's it.
All right. Arkansas State coming to Columbus. If anyone's checked the schedule, that would be September 10th. All right. A number of questions coming in as we get back to it on the Buckeyes side. Treasure the Torah. We appreciate the contribution. Thank you so much for that. What's up, Mark, Kevin, Tony? Looks like things are really gearing up for Ohio State, Notre Dame. I'll actually be in attendance. Hope to see y'all there. Very nice.
Absolutely, Treasure. Looking for, I mean, you've been a longtime supporter of not only this channel, but other channels I've been involved with. We need to make that meetup happen.
Yeah, I think everybody's looking forward to it. Get in line as soon as possible. Like August 27th, something like that. Just head to your gate, get ready, and it's going to be fun. And I think it's going to be worth the wait, just as it was in 1995.
All right, Treasure the Torah. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. David asks, hey, Mark, Evan, Tony, will Jim Knowles be on the sideline or upstairs during games this coming year?
I don't know if that has been determined yet. He's done both. So they'll usually figure that out in fall camp. I don't know that it was even asked this spring of anybody. Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at Oklahoma State, I've seen him on the sideline. He's been, like I said, he's been in the booth at times as well. It just depends on, sometimes it's the makeup of the team. Sometimes it's just what you need to see from guys, whether you need to be with them on the field or you need to see what's going on upstairs. So I tend to think he'll be downstairs, but it also depends on what kind of spotters do you have upstairs.
Yeah, I think that if you put my feet to the fire, I would say downstairs. I mean, you're installing a new system. I mean, obviously linebacker, even though they're going to really only have 2 out there for, most games, is kind of a point of emphasis. I think that it's important to have him down low. Remember, I mean, you do have, analyst types and quality control that are upstairs, and he brought over several with him from Oklahoma State, and not knowing everybody's role in comparison to what's allowed to be in the booth and what's not allowed to be in the booth. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I have a feeling that he could probably have some eyes up there that are well-versed in his system and allow him to be down low. Of course, then that leads to the question of, well, who's going to be in the booth? Well, we have some months to figure that one out.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's only so many headsets allowed, and only so many of those headsets allow two-way communication. Some of the headsets are just listening, so only certain people can actually speak to other people via the headsets.
Wayne Taylor is going to take us back in the time machine. We have been devoting some of our recent call-in shows to national championship scenarios, and I like to, even though people seem to be a little upset, a few people here and there, not too many, because they somehow believe that I've got the power to grant and take away national championships from teams and programs. But anyway, because I just think that the process for much of the history of the sport has not been fair. Therefore, let's look at what actually happened and maybe rewrite some of history. Obviously, not technically rewriting history. So Wayne was listening to our show. We were reviewing, of course, 2012, and Ohio State was removed from the championship scenario from day one because of the probation. You guys could probably bring to light for me, because I've probably forgotten the situation that obviously Gene Smith was in as athletic director in determining that we are going to play a bowl game following the 2011 season, in which Ohio State finished 6-6 in the regular season, played Florida in the Gator Bowl. And then 2012, knowing at that point, I believe, I don't know what the decision was made, knowing that Urban Meyer's coming on board, you have to be 6-6 to make a bowl game anyway. Why in the world would you make that decision? Am I missing something?
They were gonna get slammed for 12 anyway. I mean, whether or not you did 11, I mean, whether it was 11 and 12, I don't think that there was going to be a case of where during this interim season, I mean, maybe I'm being jaded and cynical, but I think that one way or the other, they were not going to be bowl eligible in 12. I've certainly heard the argument of, why did you waste it on that 6-6 year that ended up being 6-7? I just, there are times where schools self-impose and it just doesn't matter. I think this is going to be one of those cases where even if Ohio State were to self-impose, they would have just missed 2 bowl games at this point. And again, am I speaking with a lot of knowledge? No, because Gene Smith isn't going to really open up and give us, truly his innermost thoughts on that situation. But I just truly believe that banning them for that 11 season, which was kind of a ham and egg type of season where they did the best that they could, wasn't really much of a penalty, and that 12 was always going to be on the chopping block.
And I am different. My argument to that is, well, where's the 2013 bowl ban then? If they were going to get 2 years of a bowl ban, they got 1 year of a bowl ban, and I did so much research back then into the violations that were going on. It's like 1.2.63.4, code violation. And I remember writing at the time, like, Ohio State needs to take a bowl ban. And that way they'll just be done with it, because these are the previous bowl bans. And I don't know if I wrote it at the time or I wrote it after the fact. Probably after the fact. That's the best time to write stuff like that. But Gene Smith at the time, in terms of why did they play the bowl game, I remember them saying it's to reward the seniors. The seniors have been through a lot. Let's reward them. And then I think when things were either laid down in terms of the bowl ban or before then, Gene Smith had talked about how their research had gone back and looked, and there were no bowl bans for this violation in the 5 or 6 years that they went back and looked. And I remember I went back like a decade and I found some. So it was like, and again, this has been 10 years, more than 10 years now. So I may have some of my facts wrong, but I remember back then, like, if they would have gone back more years, they would have found similar violations that also cost them, that received a bowl ban. So I do think, because there's no way to prove that I'm wrong, I think that if there were going to be if they're going to get banned for 2012 regardless, then where is the 2013 bowl ban? They got banned for 1 bowl season, and if they would have taken that 2011 bowl ban, then they would have been playing Notre Dame for a national championship in 2012. And I will die on that hill, because it's a heck of a story, and it's one of those, like, ones that got away. So it's just a nice narrative to be able to live with.
Tony, you die on that hill, and I'm going to be there by your side applauding.
But patting the dirt.
Not applauding your death on the hill, but so supporting your cause, because you've done the research. I didn't want to unfairly crucify Gene Smith, because I have a number of times, and I've taken the same stance that I did the other night. But I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the experts, make sure I'm not forgetting something, missing something, because my goodness, I don't care who the best teams in the country were that year. It was probably Alabama. That was one of the most largest annihilations in a championship game we've ever seen. I don't care what the final score was. All you had to do was watch the first quarter. I know it, got not close, but I had all sorts of people saying, well, this game was more of a rout and that game was more of a rout. And I was saying, check out the first quarter, check out, Oklahoma hung with USC for a quarter and a half. There were some other ones. Nebraska, Florida turned into an annihilation in 95. It was a decent game for a quarter and a half. This was from the first play. It was just like Amari Cooper running free, just, hey, throw me the football. And Eddie Lacy just 12 and 14 yards at a pop, just trucking Manti Te'o down the field. It was just
So it was a typical
brutal.
Notre Dame bowl game.
Pretty much. That's what it's been. And so, yeah, I don't, nothing can be done now. Why talk about it? Well, we dig up everything else. I think this is underplayed, because if this is truly, and that's why it would be great to know what the definitive conclusion would have been, because this is one of the great, if it is the way you believe it to be, Tony, and I do as well, it's one of the largest gaffes made in history.
Well, I will also say Gene Smith is much smarter than I am and has way more information about the subject.
Me too. Yes.
Than I ever would, and so I will defer to him. But would they have preferred to have a national championship season in 2012 rather than a Gator Bowl loss? Who's to say? 50-50.
Well, let me throw this out here hypothetically. Since Tony can research, I can speculate. The best that the 12 team had on the table was to win a Big Ten Leaders Division crown. And let's remember that 12 team pulled some games out of a couple of times. If everything was on the table, this team really, had everything to play for and nothing to play for. Does the team perform the same way? Sure. If that ceiling is not hard and fast above them? So we can sit there and say, well, we're gonna say these 10 things are true when these 6 things aren't. But it's everything affects everything else. So I don't know. I do agree it would have been a hell of a story. Certainly, as doing this for a profession, I would have loved to have been able to cover it, write about it. Maybe I would have finally written a book. I mean, I've talked about it for years and I haven't done it yet. But I truly believe that a team that pulled a lot of sleight of hand to be able to win some games, if everything was on the table, I'm not so sure that they play as freely.
No, I agree with all of that. And in fact, I never take into account the that Big Ten championship game, to let you know how I just ignore it, because I'm putting my stuff out there. Like, this is how it would have been. And I do that without actually using all of the facts. That's how you're supposed to do this. But I do agree, like that Big Ten championship game, we saw what happened in 2013. We saw what happened the next year following 2012, when everything became too much for them, and Michigan State came out and punched them in the face in that Big Ten championship game. And that team in 2012 did have something to them, and they did rally around the fact that screw everybody else, we're going to play for each other. And it ironically came to a head, and it realized it's came to fruition against Michigan State in 2012 when they had that tough win. And that's when Urban Meyer said after the game, like, that's when everybody really believed. And that's when they saw how good they could be. And it's not like they were blowing people out, but they just realized that, it's going to take all of us, and it doesn't matter what's at the end. It's just 1 week at a time. And that would definitely change your perspective if there is a postseason ahead for you, and it would change a lot. And we saw that the very next year.
Yeah, I was just about to do the math in my head. I was about halfway through Urban Meyer's career, but I just know that whether you count conference championship games or not, or just go to BCS/championship/playoff games, the winning percentage it's crazy good. Like, one of those is 9-2. And then if you include conference championship games, it's, similar. So I would have had a lot of trust in him taking care of Nebraska, even though, yes, that was a flawed team that, yes, Michigan State, the likes of Central Florida and UAB gave them issues. No question about that. I in no way would argue that they were the best team in the country, but they would have had a golden opportunity against the ninth best team in the country or whatever they were, Notre Dame, of stealing a national championship. So again, to your point, Tony, Gene Smith, I would never match wits with him. Much smarter and more accomplished than I am. So there could have been other things in play there, and probably were, that we will never know theoretically, to Kevin's point, that would have played out had there been the other decision made.
Here's I'm not in conspiracy theories, but let's not forget, Gene Smith played at Notre Dame. Maybe he was doing them a favor by not making Ohio State available to pound on Notre Dame. But then where his plan failed is that Alabama was there, then waiting in the wings.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. All right. We'll take a quick one here and let you guys go. Appreciate you being here. These guys make it all work. Tony and Kevin, appreciate them. A number of people have commented about this being the biggest opportunity for an Ohio State national championship since 15.
Go ahead, Kevin, and I'll throw my thoughts in.
I was going to say, I mean, the thing is, every year, this is the year. This is the year. I mean, certainly with a returning Heisman finalist quarterback and some serious changes to the defense and everything else. I mean, yeah, this is the year. This is where it should be set up. So many times we've seen Ohio State successful the year prior to the year. Will they be able to be successful on the year? 15 was supposed to be the year, and they won it in 14. And then I think a lot of people kind of lost a little focus. And that doesn't mean that they came out and played horrible or anything like that, but you already have your ring. You already have all of that at that point. So it's really easy to sit there and, let the play come to you instead of going to the play. And, I think we saw that. I mean, I still to this day don't necessarily understand what I saw in a torrential downpour during that season. But I think that this certainly is the year that shapes up for it. But I'll say conversely, as I had said, they're completely reworking the defense. So, I think that it's a good case of Notre Dame's going to provide them just enough challenge. But Ohio State should be able to outscore Notre Dame. I'm not making my prediction at this point, but I think Ohio State certainly can outscore Notre Dame in that game, whether or not the defense gives up 14 or 31. But, I think people are going to need to have a little bit of patience there. But, yeah, 15 is a head scratcher.
Yeah, I'm on the record as that 2015 team. I think people hold it in way too high regard, way too much esteem given to that program and that team, because as Kevin said, they were satisfied. They had accomplished all they ever wanted to accomplish for many of them, winning the national championship in 2014. 4 guys start the season on suspension. And so that gives you an idea of some of the level of focus at that point. The Ed Warner thing, hiring Ed Warner as your offensive coordinator. Now, he was co-offensive coordinator for the 2012, 2013, 2014 season. Tom Herman then leaves, and I feel like Urban was kind of almost like obligated to allow Ed Warner to then assume play calling duties, and it didn't go well, and it went so poorly that Urban Meyer should have known beforehand that it was going to go that poorly, and he didn't. So there was some screwing up there. The Tim Beck hire, I still I will disagree with it forever. I remember putting together a list of like 25, a hot board of 25 quarterbacks coaches to take over and offensive coordinators, and I didn't put them on the list because I would never do it. And I remember, I think Kevin texted me at the time. He's like, "Hey, I'm hearing Tim Beck," and I was like, "Well, there's no way." And because you watch him, and all that ever happens is his quarterbacks either don't get any better or they get worse, and he has a long history of that. And so I feel like Urban was kind of handcuffed with promoting Ed Warner, but also, as I said, he did so poorly that Urban should have known, and then he tried to fix it in 2016 a little bit and didn't get any better. And so I think it wasn't just the coaches and it wasn't just the players. I think both bear some responsibility. I mean, Cardale Jones wins the national championship in 3 games and then gets benched midway through the season, and then has to start again because the guy who took over for him, JT Barrett, gets a DUI, gets benched. And I mean, there was so much going on that season where focus was the last thing on their minds.
I just ran the numbers in my head.
Note here, guys. This is so uplifting, going back in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, a couple downers, couple near misses that don't like to go through. But yeah, Urban Meyer, 14-4. When you let that settle in, thinking about the opponents, it's one thing to have a Kyle Whittingham, and all due respect to Kyle Whittingham at Utah, he's got a great bowl record, but he's playing, Indiana in the Red Box Bowl. He's got a lot of those bowl games. Urban, but these are like almost all top 5 teams in the country. 14-4.
And for the longest time at Ohio State, he was undefeated as an underdog.
Yes.
As well. So like he's got some really impressive stats.
I think he finished undefeated as an underdog, correct?
He very well may have. I know even that loss to Clemson in 2016, I think Ohio State was favored by like 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was a streak that carried over into Ryan Day, and obviously they weren't a favorite in the CFP championship game against Alabama. I don't know if that streak was derailed prior to that, but that's the first one that kind of jumps off the page to me.
Willie's asking for it, so there we have it. In Scarlet, Michigan Wolverines Live is our next live show, 5 p.m. Eastern. Kevin, what you got going? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. You can find me, obviously, at Buckeye Scoop. You can find my podcast, The Big Me Kickoff, over on the Buckeye Scoop channel with all of our other fine programming. And right now is a week that I am putting a wrap on Southern Swing. Was on the road, I pulled up the receipt because I didn't write it down. 3,512 miles in 12 days of driving through Georgia, Florida, and ultimately through North Carolina as well. I'm working on a 5 questions series where we ask all of these recruits some fun questions. I've got 3 of the videos done at this point. We'll start posting them next week is the plan, but a lot of hours editing.
I was going to say, because the IRS was calling here in the live chat. I think that was Gary asking for your total mileage down south.
3512. I pulled up. I saw it in the chat as well, and I had to go dig up the receipt.
Tony.
No travel, so that's been good for me. No, I recorded a couple of podcasts today, dropping one today, which is discussing the Ryan Day extension and some listener questions, of which, Mark, you may be interested in. One is the Mount Rushmore of late bloomers of Ohio State football. So we talk about that a little bit, and then we'll drop another episode tomorrow or Friday, which is trying to predict the kickoff times and networks. So we'll just go through the entire schedule and look at the games that week and where we think the Buckeyes will show up on your cable guide. So find out the Buckeye Weekly podcast on all of your podcast platforms of choice.
One of the reasons you guys are amazing in what you do is you come up with topics like that. I can't do that. And then there's no way I'm going out and stealing ideas like that. But
well, again, it was a listener question, so have at it.
Okay.
I put out the call Tuesday night saying, hey, I'm not interested in putting together a show. Give me some questions so I don't have to.
I saw that on Twitter. I think my next content's going to be dissecting all of Alabama's 47 claimed at national championships. So we're going to go through those.
It's a 12-hour show.
Yeah, or not, because some of them. Oh, you lost 2 games. See ya.
Yeah.
Kevin, Tony, appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll see everybody back here next Wednesday, and we've got Michigan Live at 5.